Welcome to the ListenUp podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hi, Dr. Mark Syms here. I'm the host of the ListenUp podcast, where I feature top leaders in healthcare. I have Jeremy Weiss here today of Rise 25, who has done thousands of interviews with top healthcare experts, and we flipped the script, and he'll be interviewing me.
Dr. Syms, I am really excited because what I love talking about is, not only your expertise, but your background. And you have a very interesting upbringing, and we're going to talk about how your two brothers influenced what you do today. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Arizona Hearing Center. And Dr. Syms helps patients to effectively treat their hearing loss so they can connect better with their family and friends and remain independent. And the reason he's so passionate about helping patients is because he lost his brother Robbie twice, and we're going to talk about that actually in today's episode. But he cares for ears. So in ENT, he is the ear portion of that, and he's performed over 10,000 ear surgeries over the past 20 years. He's a founder of the Arizona Hearing Center. He's the author of ListenUp. Check it out. You can go to azhear.com, contact them with questions, or email their support team, and check out their book on Amazon, Listen Up. Okay, Dr. Syms, two brothers, but it goes beyond that. You grew up one of six.
Correct.
What was that like?
It was controlled chaos. Let's just put it that way. It was bedlam that was relatively organized. We had a great time. The house was always full. I grew up in one of those houses where we never locked the door because there was always somebody home or always somebody coming in and out. And actually, it was a great childhood of bustling. I was the youngest of six. So one girl and five boys all in a row. And I think probably by the time my parents got to the last couple, they were hoping for another girl, but that wasn't in God's plan for them.
How was it? How do you think being the youngest influenced you?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways. One is I had a lot of people to look up to, but I also had a lot of people to emulate and follow. I watched them do their path, and so in some ways that influenced my path. People always ask me, was I a rebellious youth? And I always say, well, not really, because my sibs had already done all the rebellion. There was a lot of rebellion I didn't have to bother to do. I watched from some of their mistakes or some of their rebellion that I didn't do that. But definitely they influenced me in terms of my path and my career choice.
When you were growing up, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I really didn't know. I knew there was a heavy emphasis on education in my family. And so I knew I was going to go to college and what I was going to do. In college, I had two majors. I actually majored in biology and philosophy. And there was a point where I was considering getting a PhD in philosophy, but I chose medicine as my path.
Yeah. Let's talk about your eldest brother and his influence on you.
Yeah, so my eldest brother is a physician as well. Him and I went to the same medical school. So, obviously I kind of followed him. He also, I'm an ear, nose, and throat doctor. He's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And I'm an ear doctor, and he's an ear doctor in San Antonio. So I'd be hard pressed to say that I influenced him as compared to him influencing me, because he did it first. And so, one of the, probably when people ask what you decided to go into, frankly, I looked for people around me in medicine who were happy with what they did on a day-to-day basis. And that was what attracted me to ear, nose, and throat. And then specifically what we call in our technology, otology, neurotology, which is, as I tell people, the E of ENT. So I did a 5-year residency. And then after that, I did 2 more years specializing in medical and surgical treatment of diseases related to the ear. But him and I both do it. There was actually a point where we were entertaining working together, but his partners hired somebody before me. So, and that's okay. I'm perfectly happy with that. It turned out great for everyone, but that's how much we were aligned.
What was his advice to you? I'm sure you were asking him advice as he, kind of following his footsteps. What did he tell you?
Well, I think actually this is more emulated from him, and from my parents was, to follow your passion. do what you love and do something that you enjoy. I think there was a large pastoral influence in my family, so helping others was really important. My parents, would often go visit people when they were ill and help families when they were they're down on their luck and stuff. So that was an important part of my upbringing, and I think that was part of it. And the other thing is work really hard at whatever you do. And pursue excellence. And so I think that was emulated throughout my family. I watched my brother do that, and my father as well. And so that was something that I followed.
Yeah, so you had a tendency to kind of go into some type of helping profession. And I love that you said that, is looking at people who are happy in what they're doing, right?
Right.
People follow different avenues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a pretty good outcome, right? If people are happy with their lives, then maybe you should want to do what they're doing, as compared to a good way to not pick what not to do is people who are unhappy. That's certainly a pretty good pathway to not pursue.
So your eldest brother obviously had a big influence on you, and talk about your third brother.
So my third brother, Robbie, who unfortunately isn't with us anymore, and I do remember this vividly through my childhood. He was 5 years my senior. So when he was in his early teens, so I was in my 8 or 9, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Wow.
And so putting that in context, this was before CAT scans existed, before MRIs existed. And so he ended up having a tumor, and they attempted to remove it surgically and weren't able to. And so then he got radiation. As an interesting medical fact, my brother had one of the first 100 CT scans in the United States and one of the first 100 MRIs, because he was somebody that, they wanted more information. And so he had some other procedures done that helped alleviate the tumor. It actually, in hindsight, was a benign tumor, but he had radiation. And the long-term effect of radiation can be difficult. And so one of the things that happened to him was in his 30s and 20s into his 30s, he developed hearing loss. And it's only in hindsight that I realized how much that actually affected him. As I learned more and more and delved more and more into hearing loss, it became very clear to me how that hearing loss had affected his life and affected his relationships. And that's one of the reasons I'm very passionate about people treating their hearing loss appropriately and correctly, so they can remain connected and independent with people.
Yeah, I want to talk about how that affected him. First of all, I'm so sorry. You, your family, and your parents must have been devastated at the time, because you're so tough. Doesn't matter how old someone is, especially if someone's younger. And I'm sure it imprinted on you. How did it affect him?
Well, I think he had the hearing loss, especially when it was untreated, really became a barrier to social connection, a barrier to effective relationships, and a barrier to effective communication. And so oftentimes, I think he was very frustrated with how people communicated with him, and people were frustrated how he communicated back. And it really became a huge barrier to what I would call normal relations. I mean, sadly for me, our relationship was very strained at the latter part of his life. And when I look back, a large part of that was because of his hearing loss, that, we just weren't jibing or connecting, because the hearing loss was a big thing getting in the way. And, in hindsight, it's kind of, it was kind of like a duh moment, like, wow, I can't believe I didn't realize that was what was causing it. Because if you could have a Scooby-Doo moment and replay it, that's not how I think things would have gone down. But, it is what it is. But I do realize how profound an effect it had on our relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we take these things for granted, Dr. Syms. I mean, people who have their hearing, we take it for granted until you either have a loved one who has it and you realize how frustrating it actually is. And sometimes you just get frustrated and you throw up your hands. You're like, unfortunately, people was like, it's not even worth it. It's just so frustrating. And that's a tough thing.
I tell patients hearing loss is like baseball, but it's harder. So what I mean by that, in baseball, you get 3 strikes. In hearing loss, you get 2. So the example is somebody says something to you, you say, what? They repeat it again, and you say, huh? And then they go, forget it. Like, they're out, right? Like, after 2 tries, they're out. And so, it's not immediate. It's, I consider it like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, you're slowly being disconnected from people because it becomes a barrier. And boy, I'll tell you, who's brutally honest? The grandchildren. They go like, Grandma can't hear, right? Like,
yes.
their own kids are kind of like, oh, mom, dad, you need to do something about it. But the grandchildren turn to their parents and go, grandma, grandpa, they can't hear. They have a problem, right? Like, and so when they're telling you, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. And people should check out Listen Up. I just thought of the next title of your next book. Okay. And I know you're not ready to write the next book yet, but
well, maybe I am. It depends.
But 2 strikes and you're out.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. Talk about, how did people communicate with your brother?
Well, I think, what happens is it's a two-sided thing. One is as there's an ask for repetition, people start to hesitate to engage, right? Because they think, oh, this is going to be more work. I think that's it. And I think the other issue becomes kind of the anxiety and frustration in the person with hearing loss. So they're oftentimes anxious when they're approaching somebody because it's like, oh, I'm not sure what they're going to say. This is going to be difficult. So there's kind of an underlying anxiety in that respect and a frustration. And then I think the other part is the isolation, right? As you are slowly getting disconnected, it becomes a lonelier and lonelier world. And none of those things that I'm describing manifest themselves in a positive emotion. There are multiple negative ones that can be associated with it, but none of them are positive. So if you think of experiencing any of that, frustration, alienation, anxiety, there is no positive outcome of those feelings in anybody.
So Dr. Syms, when do people come to you? I could see certain people coming right away and certain people just delaying it for years before they actually get
Unfortunately,
help.
The answer to that is by and large too late. Or not too late, later than is preferable, right? And so, one of the things that I think is a big part of hearing loss people don't realize is people are not very good at perceiving their own hearing loss. In other words, they don't know what they're not hearing. And then the second thing is people, they compensate for their hearing loss. So there's really 2 good ways that you make up for hearing loss. One is what I call speech reading, which is looking at people's face, mouth, and lips. So you can tell the difference between wife and wipe by looking at my lips. And as an aside, in this current pandemic, putting a mask over it takes that away and makes it more difficult. The second is context. And so once people know the subject matter, then their brain will fill in the blanks. Okay. But I think the real answer is if somebody who loves you tells you you have a hearing problem, you probably do, right? It's not because they're trying to, bust your chops or give you a hard time. They're telling you that because they love you. And so I say there's 3 groups of people. There's your loved ones, and you love them because that they're brutally honest. You're also frustrated with them because they're brutally honest, but they're the ones who are going to tell you. The second group are your friends. Most of your friends are going to maybe chide you or not say anything, because the way we get along as friends is not what we say to each other, but what we don't say to each other, right? We don't say, hey, you have a hearing loss, Jeremy, do something about it, right? That's not how it works. And then everybody else, they don't care. They just think you're not sharp or smart, and they're not going to tell you. So if a loved one is telling you, it's like, when your zipper's down, who tells you? Your loved one, right? Right. And so the point is if they're the ones who are willing to tell you that, they're also the ones who are willing to tell you you have a hearing loss. So if somebody said, the other thing is if you have any suspicion, then you should get a comprehensive hearing test and see. You don't know you have high blood pressure until somebody measures your blood pressure, right? It's not something you perceive. It's something that's measurable.
What are some of the signs of people they need to get it checked out? Right. So one, you mentioned, okay, someone tells you you have hearing problems. What else are some of the signs that people should look out
for? Probably
for?
The thing that people know the most, one is turning up the volume on the TV, right? And so now everybody has a numerical gauge on the TV. So as the number goes up or somebody complains about the TV being too loud, that's probably one of the things. If you're asking people to repeat themselves, or the mindset that people are starting to mumble, it's always interesting to me when one spouse says, well, my spouse mumbles. I go, well, did they mumble when you married them? They go, no. I go, well, why would you expect them to turn into a mumbler in their old age, right? That doesn't really happen. And so it's also if you're working harder to communicate, right? And so, when you think about those things I was talking about, everybody has problems with background noise, but if you're having more problems with background noise, then that's a problem. Ultimately, if you think you might have hearing loss, you probably should get your hearing checked. The worst thing that can happen is you have normal hearing and you get reassured that your ears are healthy. But if you think hearing loss, you need to get checked.
Yeah. First of all, Dr. Syms, thank you. It's always great chatting with you. People can go to azhear.com. They can check out ListenUp, more episodes of the podcast, and listen up the book. Are there any other places we should point people towards online that would be good?
Sure. The book is at www.listenuphearing.com. So that's a specific website for the book, or to www.azhear.com. That's my practice. So either way, they can get a hold of me or get a hold of our staff, and there's plenty more information. We're really dedicated to educating people about hearing loss. There's a lot of vibrant information to help people to understand hearing loss and how it affects them better.
Check out more episodes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.